Hey guys, this is Substitute Topher. Today we're out in Baltimore, Maryland, driving the 2024 Hyundai Kona. Hyundai has completely redesigned this SUV for the 24 model year. They've made it larger and they've brought in some design cues from the Ioniq 5. Today we're going to walk you around this new SUV and then we'll take it out on the road and show you what it's like to drive. Today we're in an N line, meaning we have the 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It makes 190 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. In this car, power is sent to all four wheels via an 8-speed automatic transmission. Gone is the 7-speed DCT, and here now is just a traditional 8-speed torque converter automatic. So let's go ahead, hop out, walk you around this thing, show you what it looks like on the outside. So we're on a bit of an incline right now. As you can see, we're at this beautiful farmhouse out here in kind of the middle of nowhere in Maryland, but I feel like it's kind of the perfect place to showcase this new Kona. So this is a larger car altogether, of course, as we know. Companies just like to make cars larger and larger until they have to then introduce an entirely new model. But this one is still called the Kona, though it is an inch wider, an inch taller, and 6 inches longer than the outgoing car. So it is actually quite a bit bigger, almost up to the next class. But here it is overall, and the design language is still kind of unapologetically Kona. I mean, you look at this car and you can still tell it's a Kona, but there are some Ioniq 5 and other Ioniq brand new Hyundai design language being introduced here to the Kona. As you can see, we have this like Z that goes down the side of the car, and we have what Hyundai calls the seamless horizon lights on the front and the back. So you can see basically just their way of saying the LED strip light here on the back of the car as well as on the front. Now this is an N-line car, and unfortunately that doesn't mean we get any performance gains. It is just a appearance package, which gives us 19-inch wheels, different bumpers, different seats, and a spoiler on the back. So not too much different from just a regular SEL Kona. But overall, I think this thing looks pretty decent. Our cladding on this car is body color, so it is a little bit sportier looking than just a standard Kona without the N-line pack. We've got dual exhaust tips over here on the right-hand side. And we still have these lower mounted taillights on either side, as well as the lower mounted headlights. So everything is still kind of off the same vibe as the original Kona. So another reason I've parked it on this hill is because I want to talk about ground clearance. So there are a couple different variations of the Kona as far as you can have it in front-wheel drive or you can have it in all-wheel drive. You can have it with a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine or this 1.6 turbo. And with the all-wheel drive, you get 8.3 inches of ground clearance. And you can kind of see that here. This thing sits up pretty high and it has more ground clearance than the outgoing car. And it's interesting because this is only half an inch less than you get on the Subaru Crosstrek, which I like to think of as kind of an off-roady SUV, or the most off-roady in this class. So the Kona is actually kind of right behind that now, and it sits up a bit higher. We also have better approach and departure angles, if that matters to you in this class, but we have less overhang. You can see that these back wheels and front wheels, they're placed very close to the ends of the car. So if you wanted to do some light off-roading, you could certainly do so here with the Kona. Let's take a look in the back seat. We'll pop the hood as well. So we have 6 more cubic feet of cargo space here in this new car. We also have a Space Saver spare tire and a toolkit under the floor. Always nice to see new 2024 model year cars that still have a spare tire. Let's see if we put these seats down, how much room we have back here. So definitely not a flat load surface, but I'll give you a view from back here to give you an idea of how much room you actually have. It's pretty decent, of course, for a car in this class. You're never going to have anything crazy because these are just the compact crossovers, as they call. They're subcompact, actually. So let's go ahead and shut this and we'll sit in the back seat and we'll see what room is like back there. Kind of a cool look from the back. I like the valance, I like the spoiler. The only thing that's making me sad is there's no word of a full N. There's no word of a full Hyundai Kona N, which is a shame because we actually gave that car of the year last year. We liked it so much. So I'm a little bit bummed about that. But anyways, let's get back to this car. So We've got a pretty decent amount of room in the back seat. We have more headroom than we had before. Of course, the car sits a little bit taller. And they've also made more rear legroom by making the front seats skinnier. They showed us a diagram earlier of the way that these seats kind of curve in, and the actual seat back is skinnier than the outgoing Kona. So due to that, and due to this kind of dipping in, I'm pretty comfortable back here. With the N-line trim, you do get Alcantara seats, Alcantara. And you can pull this down and you've got your center mounted armrest with 2 cup holders, and it's really not so bad. It's not a bad place to be back here. Pretty decent interior materials, but nothing really crazy, nothing really above and beyond what we saw in the last car. I'll give you a peek up here at the dashboard. And we'll hop up there in just a second, but let's pop the hood and take a look at that 1.6 liter. Nice to know that it still does that when you get out without the key. Okay, haven't popped this yet. Ooh, we've got hood struts. That is exciting. There we go, our turbo GDI, 190 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque, and it idles decently quiet. This seems to be a pretty smooth powertrain. I've never really had any problems with this, and I think it's been pretty good for Hyundai as well. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and hop inside and get into the air conditioning so we don't overheat our GoPro. But let's take one last look here at the outside at the, what is it? Seamless Horizon. Okay, cool. Lots of styling. There is a lot going on the side here, so kind of up to the eye of the beholder if you actually like what they've done here. I think they've kind of styled it a little bit more than the outgoing car. There is more going on here. But with all this new Ioniq stuff, Hyundai's kind of trying to set themselves aside a little bit more. So it is 98 degrees, so I'm going to get in the car. And we'll take a look at what's different here. I'm going to turn the vent up just for a sec to give the GoPro a little bit of a break. But let's take a look at what is different up here. Well, the entire dashboard design and everything has been updated or breathed upon here by Hyundai to update it for the 24 model year. We have a standard 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment, which looks a little bit different. We kind of have like a new skin on this. The infotainment works pretty much exactly the same. You'll all be familiar with Hyundai's infotainment, and you'll know that it doesn't lag and it works quite nicely. Of course, we have Apple CarPlay here, fills the screen nicely. There's our Google Maps. We still have a lot of physical controls here in the Kona. They didn't ditch the things that matter. We have a climate control panel here. We've got physical switches for our heated seats, our parking camera, our drive modes are a switch here, which, check that animation out. Into sport mode, it's like the racetrack. Pretty neat. We'll stay in normal to start. And with the N-Line, we get this really cool red trim that goes along our vents, and it's like a shiny, glossy, bright red, like guards red. So I enjoy that quite a bit. In the middle, we have this open floating sort of armrest and console. You don't actually have a sealed compartment anywhere. This whole thing is open, and it allows for a little bit more room in some ways. If you want to carry something that would traditionally be too big to fit in a console, you can kind of just have it go across here. And we have these silly Volkswagen style cup holders that hold in your coffee. As you can see, if you set your coffee here, that will hold it in place for you, and you don't have to worry about stuff sloshing or spilling anywhere. We've got a wireless device charger right here, as well as a couple of USB-C ports. They ditched the USB-A ports here for 24, so I've got my phone plugged in here to CarPlay. Let's take a look at the Monroney for this particular Kona N-Line. So the starting price for the Kona, just like the base model Kona, is about 24 grand. The N-Line starts at about 31, and this one with destination and whatever else we have on it is $33,695. So actually up into kind of where the outgoing Kona N was as far as pricing goes. So the car has gotten bigger, but it's also gotten more expensive. So keep that in mind. As far as steering wheel goes, this is a completely new steering wheel, and they've ditched the Hyundai badge off of this as well, and just given the 4 dots, which is H in Morse code. 1, 2, 3, 4 is H. So it, in a way, I guess still says H, but that's what this means if you're curious. A little N badge here on the bottom of the steering wheel, and it isn't flat bottom, but we have some contouring here on this steering wheel, and it's a little bit thin for a sporty vibe, but we have some red stitching, some perforations, and overall I think it's a pretty good look. I'm a pretty big fan of how this feels in the hands, although I said it is a little bit thin. I think it could do to just be a little bit thicker, but it gets the job done. We have paddle shifters mounted back here as well. So we of course have this very open center console down here, and that is because the shifter has now moved to the column, and I'm a fan of column shifters, but I had an issue with the one on the Ioniq 5, which is essentially the exact one you get here on the Kona, and I hope you can see this through the steering wheel, but they've made it backwards. And I know I'm not crazy for this because some people have validated it, but drive is forward, right? And when you're using a traditional column shifter, it's reverse, neutral, drive. Well, this one's backwards. This one is drive, neutral, reverse, and then park is a button here on the side. That's normal. I have no problem with that. But I have, ooh, parking brake. That's right here, if you were curious. We've set that now. Reverse is away from you. I don't know. It just, the whole thing seems inherently backwards. So let me know if I'm crazy for that, but that's just kind of how I feel. And sometimes I find myself, if I'm maneuvering, I'm trying to back in somewhere, I throw the car into drive. And when I had the Ioniq 5, there were some clenched moments of me almost crashing because I was not familiar with the shifter. Anyways, we've got Hyundai's full suite of driver aids. They all come standard in here pretty much. And it's basically what you would expect to be in this car. And they all come standard at 24,000. Your lane keep assist, your steering assist, your radar cruise, all of that stuff you get on the base car. So let's go ahead and take this Hyundai Kona out on the road and see what it's like to drive. Let's put our backwards shifter there into drive. That will automatically release our parking brake. And let's do a bit of off-roading here. Let's use that 8.3 inches of ground clearance and get onto this little gravel path. Actually, it's not gravel, but there is a Kona in it, so we'll have to do some more off-roading to go around this gentleman who's filming in the middle of the road. See, at least I don't do that. Hello, sir. Okay. Anyways, let's get this thing out on the road and see what it's like to drive. What I'll say is, right off the bat, some of you know that I'm not the biggest fan of DCTs in cars that aren't necessarily sporty, and I can kind of appreciate the fact that, let's go right, I can kind of appreciate the fact that they've ditched the DCT for a torque converter automatic. It takes off smoothly. It seems a little confused when you're in first and second gear when it's trying to just very smoothly take off, but overall the gear changes and everything are seamless. I mean, this is a very well-tuned, oh, hold on. That was a speed bump, I think, or something. Overall, this is a very well-tuned transmission, and it gets the job done. So we have a few drive modes. We have normal, sport, and snow. Love that animation going into sport mode, and I also love that we finally have a different gauge cluster design here in a Hyundai. They've been the same for so long with those silly white face gauges, so these actually look pretty nice. Another thing I want to talk about is the way that they've kind of like watered down the N line. I don't know how I really feel about that. I think maybe they should have given this a little bit of something, because if they're not going to have a full N anymore, I feel like I should have something here that is sporty, if you will. And I think power level is adequate. I wouldn't necessarily expect anything more for this car, but with the 1.6 turbo, 190 horsepower, it's all right. It's nothing that's gonna blow your face off. Otherwise, they've added a bit more sound deadening to quiet things down in the interior, and I'll let you get a bit of a taste of that NVH here. It's not bad. It's a pretty quiet car overall. And going off of NVH, the ride is pretty nice as well. There isn't anything too strange in here. Of course, we have a 19-inch wheel on this car, so it's not going to ride as nice as one of the base model cars with smaller wheels. But even with the 19-inch wheels, that's one advantage of not having different suspension components on the N-Line, is you still get the nice cushy ride. I mean, it's whisper quiet in this car, it really is. Steering feels pretty decent. It's a little numb at first, but then it weights up nicely in the corners, so no real complaints for it being a subcompact crossover. On today's drive, we've averaged 25 mpg over the last 95 miles, but to be fair, my buddy Kevin and I, we were kind of flogging this thing, so it's actually done a pretty dang good job as far as that goes. And once we get one back to the HQ, once we can live with one of these for a week, we can talk more about efficiency and how this actually is. But this is one of those cars I think it's going to be pretty easy to live with, and it's still a very easy to use interior. They haven't gone overboard, and I like that because they were really striving. In fact, they designed the EV first, which I think is something that is a little bit different, and something we'll probably be seeing a lot more of, is that the ICE Kona, which of course is what we're in now, was almost the afterthought. They designed it after the electric car. So the electric car came first in the design studio, and then they designed this off of that, which is why we have some of these very EV-ish design cues, like the light bars on front and back. Brake pedal feel is actually really nice. I'm shocked at how nice this car dynamically feels through some of these curvier roads. Of course, this car isn't built for this. You have the transmission searching around a little bit more than it should, but it's just trying to be eco, so we can't fully blame it for that. But you can kind of hustle this thing and it feels pretty nice. It is actually holding a gear for me there. Let's try out our manual shifting. We have paddle shifters here. And it won't give me second. There we go. Ooh, aggressive downshift. And it does not hold gears. It doesn't react super quick. Yeah, brakes feel nice. A little bit of a zesty noise there from first to second from this 8-speed torque converter automatic. So I can appreciate the inoffensive nature here of the new Kona. This is definitely nothing groundbreaking here, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because you don't always want something that blows your mind so much that it's unusable, if that makes sense. It's a very simple to use interior in this car still. It's a usable size, and I think they're just about at capacity for how big they can make this car before they need to just completely step up to another segment. So this is probably the size that you'll see the Kona in from now on. There is, oh yes, we are cruising. There's also an electric version of this car, which comes in 2 different versions now. Brake test. Yeah. Pretty well sorted. So it didn't hold that gear for me there, so I had nothing when I exited the corner, but yeah, it's kind of fun to drive. I mean, I nothing groundbreaking. It's an honest car, and I think the strongest point for this new Kona in this segment is just overall quality and value for money, because value is a big thing in this class, and all of the standard safety features, the available all-wheel drive, there are things that are very valuable with this car, and in that way it makes sense. Not to mention, I like a lot of these different surfaces they have going on here. Like I said, I like the steering wheel. I love this red here on the vents. Of course, you have your scratchy plastic here and there, and there are still some cheap materials in the interior, but they've updated this car enough to kind of just bring it up to modern times, and I think they've done just about as good of a job as they could have done. At the end of the day, the Kona is not a crazy high-performance vehicle, though we did have the Kona N, and I'm honestly crushed. I really am, because Kona N was just one of my favorite cars ever to drive, and I kind of came into this expecting a little bit of Kona N-ness, because that was what was fresh on my brain, and of course this just isn't that. So it would be really cool if maybe we got some sort of hybrid crazy fast Kona N, I don't know. Well, that'll just about wrap it up for us today. I'm gonna make my way back to the farmhouse that we're eating lunch at, and we'll give you some final thoughts when we are pulling in there. We'll do one last walk around, and that'll wrap it up for the 2024 Hyundai Kona. Overall, I think all the changes that they've made here to the Kona have been positive, and I think that they've made a pretty good little car here. And you can see this one in this like acid green color. That's funky. They've got a pretty cool color palette going with this car. Lots of reds, blues, greens, good stuff. Non-boring. Hello. Taking my photo. Okay. Anyways, again, all good changes here. I like that they gave us an 8-speed torque converter, automatic, as opposed to the DCT that we had in the N line before and other Konas with the turbocharged engine. And overall, I think they've made a pretty good product here, and they've made all the right changes. They've made it just big enough to where they're not an entirely different segment above, but no real complaints. Cool seats. And of course, we'll get one of these back at the HQ and we'll give you some more driving impressions. But those were my first impressions there for now here on the 2024 Hyundai Kona. Take one last look here. All right, guys, well, that'll wrap it up for us today. Let me know in the comments what you think of the design language on this new Kona. I think it's growing on me quite a bit, especially in N-line trim. I think it looks quite proper. All right, cool. That'll wrap it up for us today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.